Welcome back to Jellyfest, everybody. And what would Jellyfest be without? I'm going to call you the Rog father instead of the Godfather.
Wow, that's clever.
Well, yeah, I'm a lyricist, you see. So, yeah, it took a long time to come up with that. So, there is no Jellyfest. There is no Jellyfish page. There is a lot of things that wouldn't exist in a lot of our lives if it wasn't for this wonderful person I have with me, the very maybe embarrassed by that introduction, Roger Joseph Manning Jr. Hello.
No, I'm the guy who jumped around in a lot of psychedelic grandma clothing. I'm not easily embarrassed. So don't worry about that.
Was there ever a costume when you were like, no, that's too much?
No, because I wouldn't have committed to that and done that if I thought that was the case. I mean, that was part of the point for me, was to free up the side of the visuals with the band. I mean, obviously, everybody has their own brand and version of what looks cool and what works for them and what they find flattering and entertaining and all those things. And at different points in the band's careers, both versions of the group, I think we all locked in to what that was for ourselves, and it still ended up looking cohesive, like a band would like to come across.
Was there, after Belly Button leading into Spilt Milk, was there a kind of a meeting of, are we going to tone down the colors, etc.? Because you were, I mean, compared to other bands, you were still very colorful, but in terms of like stage wear and everything, it was more, I guess, stylish than anything else. It was, you dressed very stylishly on some of those photo shoots.
I think it was a happy coincidence in that obviously we lost two creative people and gained two new creative people with their own flair and taste and preferences. And I mean, I certainly was always finding new outfits and things I wanted to enjoy. So I think it was just a natural evolution. I mean, you got to remember there's 3 years between the first and second record. It would have been, I had no interest in showing up with the same clothing or presentation anyway for myself.
It kind of reminds me a little of the David Bowie story when he was Ziggy Stardust, and he had this band full of northern musicians who were, take no nonsense or anything like that. And Bowie went up to Mick Ronson and says, right, this is what you're going to be wearing. He's like, I'm not fucking wearing that. And then he wore it. And then this all the ladies that were attracted to him. And then the next night it was like, David passes that mascara. And, they were kind of really going for it after that. So no one took any convincing to have to wear some of that stuff.
Well, no, I mean, no, there was no convincing. I mean, certainly somebody, you're representing each other's identity. It's not just, I'm going to go out there and do whatever I want. It's a reflection on the other band members. So, I mean, I remember a handful of times where we each spoke to each other about something, particularly for photo shoots, because photo shoots did have a premeditative aspect to them. Mm-hmm. There was a bit of branding and thought and marketing and all those things everybody's got to discuss when, you're in a corporate major label commerce type situation. But thankfully, as we were mostly in line musically, we were mostly in line with how we wanted to present ourselves, whether that was videos or magazine interviews or photo shoots. So it was a fairly natural evolution, even with 6 different personalities over time.
Andy said one of the greatest lines I've ever heard, and I've used it many times, that if you stood still behind a drum kit for an entire gig, if you wear stripes going in both directions, you don't have to move about as much to be entertaining.
That makes total sense.
So since this is, the 10th anniversary of this very fan page, and there have been there are other great fan pages out there. I'm just very big on events. You see, I've baked myself a cake and everything.
I love your wall display back there.
Well, I've changed it for every interview. You see,
gotta have Cookie Monster. That's Muppets are crucial.
Muppets are crucial. Did you watch the Sesame Street documentary? I really want to see that.
I didn't even know it was out. I have not. What Sesame Street was and what their objective was in the late 60s, early 70s when they started, and my generation happened to be their first audience, couldn't be more different as the decades evolved, particularly now. So I'm sure I would find it fascinating. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that.
There's a just a beauty and an innocence to Sesame Street that I will take more from that than I will from a lot of other things that give life lessons, like the Bible and stuff like that. Sesame Street, Harry Monster was, full of, morals and, brought the best out of children.
Just like the Bible. I wouldn't, I appreciate your comparison, but I don't find them that different, in that both have agendas behind them. Mm-hmm. And that's what people are going to try to do to each other. That's fine. All that aside, there was so much wonderful takeaway from that show for me as a kid. And despite how I was being indoctrinated, I watched Sesame Street on Saturday morning and went to church on Sunday morning. So I didn't have a chance. But ultimately, I can't imagine Sesame Street without the contribution of the Muppets and all the incredible music that Joe Raposo wrote. Again, in that early those first seasons, and I was talking to my wife Laurel the other day about the evolution of just the Muppets alone, and how they've been out for many years in the public eye before they decided to join forces with Sesame Street. There's some really amazing footage of, I think it's just Jim Henson and Frank Oz, who are basically a partnership and the main puppeteers or Muppeteers. And, they're on the Smothers Brothers show. They make appearances on a lot of American and possibly British variety shows of the late 60s prior to, really going full time with Sesame Street. And it's all amazing stuff because it's fairly surreal and quite psychedelic as all forms of art were attempting to explode and expand into.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't really, I had no concept of psychedelia or anything, but I think my first exposure to it probably would have been Sesame Street, that jazz piece, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that is crazy. Like just the level of musicianship, but like it was kind of freaky to me as well, because it was just there. I didn't know what the purpose was for it. It was just kind of like a little acid trip before we go back to something wholesome involving Oscar the Grouch or something. And even now though, the character that they've just brought in who has autism, I think is a beautiful thing. I'm
sorry, a Muppet or a human?
A Muppet. And
wow.
they've captured the personality traits of someone. I'm guessing it is played by someone or at least written by someone who has autism as well. Mm-hmm. And it just never fails to teach inclusivity and very important things like that. So yeah, I don't know how we got onto the Muppets. Oh well, Cookie Monster, obviously, who is a hero for other reasons because he can never seem to get enough cookies, which is something I can very much.
Yes, gluttony is a proper thing to. One of the 7 deadly sins is a good thing to.
So have you
make okay with kids?
Well, have you seen the Sparks? I'm guessing you have seen the Sparks film. It comes out here.
Just saw it like a week and a half ago. Just saw it.
It comes out in 2 weeks here. I can't wait for that. You're not in it, are you? I was thinking you might have been in it.
Unfortunately, I'm not. But ego aside, when we were on tour with Beck in, it would have been late 2018, I think. I've lost track of the time, but it was years before the film. There was a stranger on the bus one day as we were all boarding, and everybody's running around taking care of business, and nobody's being mindful to introduce this guy who's like, "What? How are you in the inner circle? And what are you doing here?" And he was very quiet. And my wife Laurel happened to be out with us, and we started making small talk with him to find out, no, I'm a longtime acquaintance of Beck's, and blah 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 blah. And we're just, oh, what do you do? Blah blah blah. Film director, and he had been involved in all kinds of things that we've all known. And then it got into the subject that one of his latest and greatest passion projects was being officially given the duty of making the Sparks documentary. And we're like, wait, what? Okay. That's absolutely mind-blowing. And then we just went off on a tangent. And it was Edgar, the director, and he said, well, we're going to see them tonight. I go, we're going to see who? He goes, Sparks. You're playing a show with Sparks. I go, okay, one, that's blowing my mind again. No one tells me anything. You show up on the bus the time you're supposed to be there, and drive you to the show, you do your sound check, eat your dinner, change your clothes, here we go. And had I not been talking to the future director of their documentary, I wouldn't even have known that. So the whole thing couldn't have unfolded more amazingly, because not only did one of my favorite British contemporary bands, young people's music, called Shame, who you may or may not know. I think we might have talked about them. They were opening as well. And it wasn't really opening. It was like Beck happened to be headlining that night, but Sparks was kind of a dual headline bill. Oh, so it was Shame, Sparks, and us. And we were playing somewhere down near Brighton. It was some southern coastal community. And Edgar came back and said, hey, you want to go say hi to Russell and Ron before their show? And I go, well, I do, but they're going to go on in 10 minutes. I don't want to bother them, and et cetera, et cetera. And he said, no, it's not a bother. I go, look, I'm sure they're very sweet and they're very cool with fans, but I know what a headache it can be when you're trying to concentrate and get ready for a show. And you're shaking hands and kissing babies and all here's this important guy from the record company. And this is, this person's your fan club. On and on and on. So I didn't want to be that guy. But he insisted. And I said, my God, I'm probably never going to get an opportunity. So Laurel and I went back there. They were very willing to make time for us and say hello. And I got to tell Ron that, one of my favorite songs of all time is Thank God It's Not Christmas. And keyboardist to keyboardist, I couldn't believe some of the harmonic sophistication that was happening in that song, and just how interesting it was. And yet it was, full early British glitter glam anthem. And they seemed very appreciative, and got to thank God my wife was there, because the selfies were taken and uploaded later on the Insta, because I never think that way. And but what a real treat. Thank you, Edgar. And thank you for an amazing documentary.
I can't wait to see it. It's it's out in about 2 weeks here.
Okay, great.
I'm very, very excited about that. And it's wonderful, considering what a fan I am of yours, to hear that you are the same around your heroes as well. I know you are, but it kind of makes me feel better for, hopefully not booking you too much for interviews and stuff like that.
Oh, well, oh God, no.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's plenty of acts you and I wouldn't hold in common, and that we could turn each other on to. I mean, there's probably chunks of my required listening that you'd be surprised I don't know or haven't heard, and vice versa. It happens all the time.
And it's one quick story, because Taylor Locke played with Sparks a couple of years ago, and
I saw him do that.
Oh, Japan. Right, okay. Well, that was when I happened to be going to LA, but it was right after I interviewed Taylor, and Taylor was like, well, you can have 2 tickets if you want. And I was like, great. But I was in LA, and I give the tickets to two friends who are eternally grateful. Because I will drop names wherever I can. And funnily enough, someone who went to the show got turned on to my music because Taylor was in the audience and was like, "Oh, I'm a big fan of Rooney." Typed in Rooney on Google. One of the first things that came up was my interview with him, and then he found my music through that, and the vocals that you put on my track as well, which was awesome. So yeah, talking about, this is again 10 years of a fan page, basically. So in the early days, like Beatnik Beach and the earliest days of Jellyfish, did you start to already accrue sort of hardcore fans who were coming to every gig and collecting all the records, etc.?
Definitely with the first Jellyfish album. Yeah. I mean, we used to joke that we had our own version of Deadheads because, we had Jellyheads because we kept seeing the same faces.
Better than fish heads.
Yeah, exactly. No matter what state we were playing in. And it was very charming. It was so cool to see that unfold and be very organic that way.
Mm. So did the Jellyfish Army come from that? Sort of whose specific idea was the Jellyfish Army in a way to connect with fans? Was it the record label's idea, or was it, because it seemed very homemade, I guess?
It was very homemade. I mean, everybody understands the value of some kind of organized fan club.
Yeah.
But we wanted, of course, to do that on our own terms and make it as personal and homespun as possible. And actually, my former partner, Charlotte, headed that up. She did all of the grunt work very early on and got it going. And then Kent and his wife, Selena Scully, they took on the second half. Well, I think they came in around the second half. They definitely did the Imperial Drag fan club. But I mean, we were just very lucky. We just have a lot of really amazing people who were committed to helping us out. And
those were people largely that you knew, but were there also fans that were coming in saying, "Look, I can help with this," etc.?
Well, in the pre-internet days, that was really challenging. We often had lots of fans that would show up with gifts and offering to take us out to dinner and all that great stuff. But it was no, there weren't any outside fans that I can recall that ended up becoming part of our machine. Our machine never got that big. I mean, we probably would have employed a lot of those people. Mm-hmm. But whether it was the artwork or videos, we had an awful lot of people who we really weren't interested in moving forward with them unless they really demonstrated that they kind of understood and got what we were about. I mean, an example of this is the Ghost at Number One video, which completely got away from us because we kind of thought the director and ourselves were on the same page. And when we all realized we weren't, it was too late. It was like, we've already spent this money. We've got this footage. You've got to edit it and you've got to use it. And it was unlike the New Mistake video, which we feel captured the spirit and energy of the group, and certainly that song and the Spilt Milk album. The Ghost at Number One, which was the first video, that video did not provide the reconnection with our dedicated fan base we'd hoped.
It's an odd video.
Yeah, and it's just not. It just doesn't reflect, again, like the New Mistake and the other one. It doesn't reflect our spirit and our essence. And
yeah. I think Andy said it was banned in Europe because you guys weren't wearing motorcycle helmets and you had to...
Oh, that's probably true. Yeah, I remember something about that.
And you had to re-record a green screen thing, which kind of just got plastered over the top of it. And any story that was there was kind of just taken away. But I feel that it completely contradicted anything that you were trying to convey in the song. So, I mean, okay, because I know I haven't got you too long, Eva, and there's a couple of questions from performers who were a part of Jellyfest. And I've got to say, the level of performances for Jellyfest has been incredible. Everything from Excellent. A cappella to fully blown arrangements. Someone covered I'm Not Your Cowboy. Someone covered Could Have Been You. Always To Be My Girl was covered. It covers the breadth of...
We have some surprisingly talented fans, and I always love discovering that, and I look forward to hearing these tracks, sing them, and big thank you from me to everybody who's been participating, making this fest a festival for you.
I just threw it out there, and the amount of people who immediately got back in touch. I mean, the page, I can't say enough good things about it for what it has done for me and what it has done for a lot of other people. It's made friendships, people have the level of discussion and finding long lost pieces of footage, etc. Kai Dansberg is a legend, as I've said throughout this entire thing. He's been amazing. So with something like, with joining a fan club then, did that come from a place of love? Like it felt like sort of, like Ghost at Number One, which come from a place of making too much over a performer's or an artist's death. Did it kind of come from a sort of, it's kind of hard to say because I've heard different things, like a hesitancy about being too big and then having a fan club that sort of maybe takes things a bit too far and too seriously, or...
I mean, I didn't write the lyrics, so I can't speak to its intent directly. I know for me, I thought it was a brilliant assembly of, lyrical poetry reflecting a lot of the innocent fascination that we all had growing up with bands like Kiss and Zeppelin and Elton John, and just becoming members of their fan club. Of course, Kiss had the Kiss Army, very large, concerted effort to make a very special fan club. But I mean, Osmonds, David Cassidy, Bobby Sherman, the Monkees, all the bands from the 60s that we inherited. Fan club was a big part of it. Again, there's no social media, there's no internet. And communicating via snail mail was a big deal. And if a sticker was included or a picture that the rest of the fan base did not have because you had paid your $1.25 or whatever, was another added bonus to growing up in an era of albums, vinyl, and gatefold giant 12-inch pieces of artwork with posters and sleeves and liner notes and the whole experience of that. And so fan club for me definitely celebrates in a great kind of nostalgic honoring of that lost time.
Okay. It's just, again, I guess there are people, Andy's lyrics are so, dense with hidden meaning potentially that, there's a lot of, as with any lyricist, I guess, like people try to find hidden meanings in lyrics and try to dissect a little bit, and just wasn't sure. And we've not gone too big into it. Obviously, with Andy kind of backing away from any kind of spotlight, I wasn't. I kind of thought myself that maybe there was a piece of that in there as well, but certainly not something we need to dwell on at all.
I honestly don't know.
Okay, well, I'm guessing you just never asked each other what a certain lyric meant then, or why it was put in there, or
I only asked him. I trusted him implicitly. I mean, he blew my mind from day one, even pre Jellyfish, with his commitment to trying to write the best lyrics he could. And I would only question him if there was a sentence or a segment that I was completely unclear on. But I usually would read through a lyric and get a vibe from it. Which I always thought was inspiring and a cool direction to proceed, and always kind of captured the musical energy of the song. Of course, they related. I like when lyrics and music absolutely correspond and propel each other into a successful finished song. And so, yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate that way because I trusted the high artistry that were his lyrical contributions.
Absolutely.
Like I didn't worry or think about that part
right
as much because I knew it was already dialed.
That's cool. Okay, well, a few questions, very quick, from performers from Jellyfest. Ty asks, from your entire time in Jellyfish, is there any lone track or melody that you're most proud of?
No, of course I like them all for different reasons. I mean, I think you and I have talked about this. They're all special to me, and I'm very happy we had the time and finances to record them, and for that opportunity. I don't. I have fond memories about how certain ideas were developed, certainly during the demo process, and you can believe an idea is great and worth developing early on, but it helps when the arrangement and production process verify that at the end.
Yeah,
right. Because one of the potentially scariest, challenging times of this, as you know, being a fellow songwriter and musician, is in developing the song. It can go a number of ways, and you can meet all kinds of unforeseen hurdles and challenges and obstacles that the public's not going to know about, and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. What's the vision for this song? All kinds of things can throw it off course during the time you take to realize it, and I'm very happy to say that I don't feel that way about any of the songs. I feel all the songs arrived where they should have arrived. Having had the luxury of hearing them just with piano vocal or guitar vocal in their inception.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's one artist who I talked to about Sabrina, and from the demo to the final thing, the Boysenberry Punch line, the melody expands and it leads back into that second chorus, and it's one of the most satisfying pieces of resolvement of a melody into that chorus. It's amazing, and I can imagine the sort of eureka moment when that sort of came. Because to me, it seems like you maybe weren't happy. You knew there was something else there, and it was just a case of fiddling around until.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the joy of realizing music in that band, or with Licorice Quartet, or with anything I've done, and this is only with stuff I've been involved with as a collaborator and co-writer. Those eureka moments are absolutely why I do this.
Yeah.
Why I put up with all of the inherent challenges and rough ride that this career is because of those eureka moments, because they are, 1 minute you don't know how the puzzle is going to be resolved, and you actually start doubting whether you have the abilities to resolve that puzzle. And then once you figure it out and go, oh my God, not only do I like this, but wow, we really, really solved this riddle.
Yeah.
That's the greatest feeling. And I think I've mentioned the song Glutton of Sympathy before that way, because Andy and I went through a whole series of reworkings of just the simple chord progression and melody before we even started to demo it. What are the instruments going to be like? What's the energy going to be like? What's the attitude? Right? I mean, the traditional songwriting way is, if the song's not blowing your mind when you're just playing it in your living room and you're, with the acoustic or piano, even if you don't have the lyric finished, if there's not something inspiring in there, in that raw version, then you're typically not going to pursue it. So we believed in the raw version, as many ups and downs as that had. And the demoing process was quite a bit of a question mark, because we'd kind of get one section intact and then we go, all right, well, how are we going to make this next section even more uplifting, not have it be a left turn, make sure it's tied into the verse that we know is working. Neither he and I were trained consummate guitarists, and yet we knew the song was going to be very guitar based. Thankfully, we had friends like Lyle Workman to come in and help with the demoing process. But I'll never forget. It was late one evening, and we've been working on the song, and kind of just like, I know we're going to get there. We don't quite know how. Let's just keep throwing ideas at this. And we played it one night out on his living room stereo system to kind of get out of the demo speakers, and let's hear it on a proper stereo.
Yeah.
And he and I didn't say anything to each other. I could both tell we were high-fiving each other across the room because, I mean, in many ways, the demo is still the winning version to me compared to the album, because the Spilt Milk version is us just trying to capture the magic that was that demo. We changed very little, almost nothing, come the final, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so much charm and struggle, naivete, innocence, all that kind of first time stuff is captured in that demo more than any other demo. And again, for me, that was a very personal moment of victory. Like, it was worth all the blood, sweat, and tears. Like, oh my God, this song is kind of blowing my mind. And I don't know what part of my personality and his personality this came from, right? It really joined up into this third kind of force that's the Jellyfish sound here on the next album, Spilt Milk, kind of thing. It was very emblematic and representative of all the things that we had learned from Belly Button and we're trying to put into this Spilt Milk record.
Glutton of Sympathy, such a beautiful song. It really is. And how close were you to keeping the demo intro, that kind of rock intro? Or was that just never going to happen on the album?
I honestly don't remember what happened with that. Like, I honestly don't remember.
It's fun. I like it. It's very.
It is fun, and I know we believed in the idea. And at some point, we must have changed our minds. I don't think we would have been talked out of it.
Yeah,
people could absolutely persuade us, but ultimately, Andy and I had the final decision amongst ourselves. Yeah, I don't remember. That's a good one for the long lost legend of.
So, Jared asks, he has heard that you are a big fan of podcasts. Do you have a favorite?
I am a big fan of podcasts. I don't have.
You can say mine. It's fine.
To all the
okay.
I don't know that I could steer anybody into one in particular.
Okay.
It's like anything. I gain and learn so much from each one.
Okay. And Ty asks, first instrument you ever owned and first album you ever owned?
First instrument I ever owned. Well, I was lucky enough to have an uncle who had a 1965 Ringo Ludwig 5-piece drum set that he sold my parents very cheaply for me for my 11th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And there was, our grandparents gave us the piano that I learned on in the house. But the first instrument I spent my own money on was a used Rhodes piano that a junior in high school was selling me. I was a freshman. And it was not a very good Rhodes at all. But the fact that I actually had an electric piano in my presence that I could play after school, that I had bought with my own money, was pretty miraculous. And what was the other question?
Oh, well,
first instrument and first what?
First album, but it just reminds me of, because I wanted a keyboard when I was young, but I didn't know the difference between analog, digital, anything like that. I've just thought keyboard with lots of, where number 34 on the setting is the that kind of thing. So I got home one day and my mother had, and I wish I'd have kept it now, my mother had bought me a Hammond organ from an old folks home. I don't know how they got up the stairs, but it took up most of the room, but all you got was the seaside, or I do like to be beside the seaside kind of sound, and one drum beat, and that was it. And now I would kill to have it, but just to give you an idea of the time period, I sold it and I bought many packets of Pogs because it was the 90s. And I kind of do regret that now. So yeah, first album, sorry. First
album's easy. That was Kiss Alive 1.
Nice. Okay, so a couple more questions before I let you go, because I feel like I've kept you far too long as it is.
Oh, it's all good.
Kai asks, any more progressive masterpieces on the horizon, such as Survival Machine? He is a huge fan of your prog pop leanings.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Kai. Yeah, I'm actually always surprised when any prog comes out of me, but I have enjoyed so much of it, and it's all British. I mean, 90% of it is the Genesis family tree and the Yes family tree. And
I like to think when you performed Survival Machine, you wore a wizard's hat and a cape.
It's not that good. And the Crimson family tree. I mean, there were so many, right? The whole British prog era from like 72 to 78 or whatever is so incestuous. But a lot of really great stuff came out of it. I don't have any songs that I can think of. Well, no, there's actually one. I'm working on it now. It's called On My Way to the Moon, or On Our Way to the Moon. I'm trying to remember what lyric I ended up using, because I have to work on these things in spurts every few months or years because of all the other stuff going on and attempting to pay your bills, et cetera, et cetera. So, no, I think Kai will be pleasantly surprised by that one.
So is that going to be Licorice Quartet, or is that going to be solo?
No, it's for my future solo EP,
Nice.
which I hope to have out next year. I still got some work on it, but yeah, I definitely have 4 songs that I'm proud to share that are nearing the finish line.
That's wonderful. Laura asks, Laura Jones, this may be a bit of a long-winded question for a potentially short answer. What is your method for building sounds with different keyboards? You have so many. How do you decide which is best for each song? Also, what are your earliest musical influences regarding pianos?
Regarding pianos
and keys, right?
Well, my earliest influences were. Sorry, this alarm keeps going off. My earliest influences are the ones that came through television and stuff. I mean, I didn't even really understand. I was a fan of songs. I didn't really understand, as most little kids don't, what instruments were making what sounds when, and it just all sounded like a big happy mush to me. But my classical piano teacher, I took generic classical piano lessons growing up. She had a subscription to Keyboard magazine, and that came monthly, and I would leaf through the stack of those while I was waiting to be the next student, while the student before me finished up, and really started to have my mind blown and my eyes open to these keyboards that didn't have a full 88 keys. They're very little keyboard and had lots of knobs and buttons on them. I was like, what the hell is that? And what does it sound like? I could guess, right? Because disco started using a lot of synthesizers very overtly. So I was starting to guess that these space age noises were coming from these futuristic looking electronic contraptions. And I was inspired by all of it, because what I soon found out was, as heavy and as ominous and powerful as the guitar sound could be, with the advent of electronic instruments, keyboards, the sounds were starting to be endless. And then when I was in high school, samplers came out. So they literally were endless. You could record and play back anything you could imagine, the way that the Mellotron, the tape machines did. So I was a fan of all of it. It was just an endless world of endless possibilities. So it never got old. I was always intrigued. I always wanted to learn more. And deciding which ones to use on a project, it all comes from just practicing being an arranger. And I'm still practicing, and I'm still getting better at it. There's so much that I know now that I didn't even know during the Jellyfish days that I wished I'd known. But I also like that part. I like the constant discovery. So one of the reasons I have I have enough keyboards for 5 lifetimes of music making. But the reason one of the reasons I have so many is because I love treasure hunting, and if I can find them cheap and inexpensive and buy them when they're not trendy, one, they're more affordable.
Yeah.
And 2, I love exploring and exploiting all their different possibilities, because so many manufacturers, so many different synth engines, so many different styles of architecture and producing synthesis. It all fascinates me. So if the project has a lot of freedom to it, I'll experiment and throw different concepts and ideas. I'll go into, just digital territory, for example, with synths, which is going to mean a lot of late 80s, 90s synthesizers versus just sticking with analog machines or whatever. And that keeps it exciting and interesting. And there's some pieces in my room as we speak that I know very, very well inside and out, and others I don't really understand. The architecture is super deep, and like I need to study the manual more and learn more and watch more YouTube tutorials and all that stuff. And I don't know if I'll have time to do that, but the fact that there's something out there that's holding my attention and my curiosity, that's important when you're 55, because life can become very tempting for life to start being very jaded and for you to start being very cynical.
I refuse to believe that you're 55.
Thank you, sir.
That's my cat Rocco, who makes numerous appearances during Jellyfest.
Rocco.
Yeah. Do you want to make a cameo? He's just scratching at the moment. That's I've got to say, one of the main things that your work influenced me, because it's such a broad range of sounds and styles, but within each individual project, you use a lot of different sounds on each song, but there's an overall cohesiveness, which is such an art. And I mean, one of the main pieces of work where that really influenced me was the Demolition album. And a lot of the sounds that you use on that, not Hammond, the solo that you did on American Pipe.
Is it Farfisa-y? Like kind of 60s combo organ? I'm trying to remember.
It's like wah sort of. That's going to annoy.
Oh, it's kind of a clavinet.
It's a clav, yeah. It's one of my favorite things that you've ever done.
Amazing! I love hearing that.
It's because the thing is, though, as well, it has a very neat ending to it as well. The way that's so into the sort of the next chorus. I love that when a solo, and that's the thing that I love about Brian May's guitar solos as well, that they really do have a beginning, middle, and end to them, and can interweave with what is to come next, sort of thing. And
they're arranged.
Yes,
right. They weren't recorded from a jam, and there's nothing wrong with a jam, but it's. I've always been more fascinated by architects. I studied to be an architect. I wanted to design custom homes for people. And
really? Okay.
Yeah. And then when I realized that 99% of the architects out there don't spend their time and are not hired to design custom homes, they're designing boring things like office buildings, and city public works. That doesn't sound very creative. I don't. So music took over. But my architectural mind loves mapping and strategizing, and particularly with recording, you're only going to get a chance to say it once. I don't see why you shouldn't think it through.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean that my heroes and colleagues and people I know have not improvised an idea off the top of their head and it's stuck. Like, it's not going to get any better than that. That was brilliant. I mean, Beck likes to do that a lot. He likes to take the first or second pass of an idea that his musicians come up with, because he loves capturing that innocence and that almost like you're stumbling through the track because you don't have your technique 100%, but your heart and your mind already knew what to do. He finds a lot of value in that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I'm going to get to one thing that will make you go back in time a little, were you in the studio when the laughter track happened on the Demolition album?
Sorry, what track?
For the laughter track at the end of Demolition, where Tim and
I was the only other person in the studio.
Really? Okay, so was that your voice way in the background then?
Well, you can hear me briefly for literally like 1 or 2 seconds because I knew this was being recorded and I couldn't believe how spontaneous and hilarious it was and how it wouldn't stop. It just kept feeding itself. It basically became a laugh feedback loop. And I was so happy that it was being recorded. If for no other reason than to just amuse ourselves later on. I never thought it would actually end up on their recording, but
it's very funny. Did you know that on streaming platforms it's actually called Ha Ha Ha?
Nope, I didn't know that at all. That's really cool.
So before we go, I got this recently. One magazine, of which there is an interview with a certain Roger Joseph Manning Jr.
What era is this?
Oh, this is belly button era.
Amazing.
I'll show you the picture because I don't think I've seen that particular picture from that photo shoot.
Right, back of the album cover outtake.
Yeah. So there's and it makes me wonder whether you would just like really did not want to do this interview or not.
I probably was tired and hungry. Do I come across as an arrogant prick, as I often can?
A little bit,
or did back then.
So what? So they're asking you. Well, the thing's called Jelly Babies. Who and what are jellyfish? The strange group of gentlemen wiggling their way towards the chart with their rather odd ditty, King is half undressed, taste cut up with their keyboard player Roger Manning, and asked him what the jiggins is the song on about. And you say that the song was written by Chris. And it's more of an event than a song. My cat is going insane in the background. So apparently the song was written by Chris, according to you.
But what's it captured on? We play it live or something? What are they talking about?
No,
I don't know what they're talking about.
Just the single release. They're asking what the song's about, and
what single? Sorry,
King is half undressed.
So, Chris Manning.
Yes, your brother.
Well, he didn't have anything to do with the writing of that song. He wasn't.
This is why I thought you were just being angry and cocky, and King is Half Undressed is basically a 4-minute rock opera. There is just so much crammed on one record, and that's like the ultimate listening experience. What's it about? Well, I'm not sure really. You'd have to ask Chris, the bass player, because he wrote it.
That's just when they were transcribing their cassette. That's obviously just a misprint. I would have said something like, well, you'll have to ask Andy. He wrote it, meaning the lyric. I think they just got their names mixed up.
I'm cross-examining you here. That's enough about
there you are.
Yeah, that's enough about your record. What's the most disgusting thing you've ever done? Oh, God, it must have been when I was about 10 and my brother and me used to play this bogey game. We'd try and get each other on the ground and the person who lost would have to eat the other one's bogey. It was gross. I always lost.
Meaning snot.
Snot, yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. So you never use the word bogey. This is all lies. This is all filthy, filthy lies. I have no problem sharing all the crazy things my brothers and I did. Mm-hmm. Right? We were 3 boys, 2 years apart. That's an energy ball that could, beat the sun. And we did some screwed up, crazy, fun, dangerous play games that boys do, little kids do, period. Mm-hmm. And I don't recall anything like that. Because as you said, we wouldn't have called it bogey. See, I've got a lot of these in the archives, so this would be a fascinating.
That's really, that's one big, as they say in current cancel culture, that's a slam piece, or it's a smash piece. There's a term for it.
A screw. Well, maybe, I don't know. It didn't make you look good. I mean, Can you remember the last time you cried? You were driving back from Disney World. You'd both had such a fabulous time that we didn't want to leave, so we both started crying when we got to San Fran. We're very emotional people.
I remember.
Okay, and what really bugs you?
And it makes sense.
Yes, it does. Who really bugs you? This'll date it. Right now, it's probably Saddam Hussein and George Bush. I can't stand watching all this fighting. It drives me crazy. It sounds old-fashioned, but I just wish everyone would love each other.
I'd like to think that I said that.
There you go. And you know, that's something that could be put on T-shirts and plates and collector stuff that I'm sure I would buy 10 of forevermore. So yeah. This has been not a huge car crash of an interview, so I do appreciate you putting up with my daft questions. So and Rocco is just completely causing havoc now, so I am going to leave it at that. So yes, Roger, thank you for taking part in this, especially so close to our last interview as well. Licorice Quartet Threesome Volume 3 will be out at some point soon-ish.
Yeah, ideally end of the year. We just have to see how everything transpires, and but we're trucking away on that now. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. You always have very insightful, researched questions, and if you don't, the fans do.
Yeah, see, I rely on the knowledge, but then it trips me up all the time. So, and you're on tour with Beck next year as well. That's
what I'm told. We'll see.
Nice. Okay. So, because that's the thing, when Beck says he's on tour, the first question is Roger and Jason going to be there? So that's good to know. And as
far as I know, we are.
And your next solo project out next year as well, which very excited for. So yes, we'd love to chat again. Keep us all up to date, and we're very much enjoying your YouTube series as well.
Cool. Thanks, Pablo.
Yes, and if anyone hasn't checked it out, you've got to check out Roger's performance of Turnstile at Heaven's Gate with just Roger and the piano, because it's
right. Is that uploaded to YouTube?
It's somewhere on YouTube, and not on your channel.
That was specially released for the fans only, but this was months ago.
Okay, then it might. I think it's still on YouTube, but I apologize if I've just.
Well, no, I think it graduated onto YouTube. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, okay. Yes, I watched it recently just to make sure it was still there, actually. But yeah, cool. If you're wondering, how can one person pull this off? Because it's.
Well, that's why I never play that song live. I mean, it's just total gymnastics.
It is.
So I was happy to try to pull off a home studio version, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope everybody else does.
Very much so. Well, thank you for taking part in Jellyfest, and thank you for your support for the page, because the page doesn't exist without your, support and feedback, etc. And here's to another 10 years of the Jellyfish page. We're not doing this every year. We might do it every 10 years, so we'll all be older and grey by then.
Yeah, thanks for going out of your way, putting forth the energy to put this together.
I'll ask you this interview again in 10 years' time and see if you remember the questions then as well. Do you know who this person is?
Of course.
Who is it? I don't know. Oh,
he's Britain's Michael McDonald.
That's Rick Astley, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good Lord. So I'm not used to him with the hair like that, with such fabulous hair. So yeah, early 90s Rick Astley is good stuff. Well, I'm going to delve back into 1991 as I normally do, and and I want look again because I dragged this on forever. So yes, thank you, Roger, and keep peeled on Jellyfest to see what's coming up next.
Right on, man. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Pablo.